got off the phone with Inspector Todd in Detroit. He says if you're out here investigating the Tandino murder, you needn't bother coming back.
I don't want to take it anymore.
A man who claims to be on vacation, you look a lot like you're on a stakeout.
Stakeout? No. I'm picnicking. This is like a picnic area.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin.
I'm Jake.
And this is Movie Matters. And today, our last blockbuster of the month, we talk about Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy, 84?
Yeah.
Jake, you last left us off saying that you had never seen this movie. So start it off. What'd you think?
Yeah, so I have seen bits. I'd never watched it all the way through. For sure, like, it was more or less a first-time watch. Yeah, I did like it. I don't have, like, negatives, but I don't know if it was, like, the mood I was in or what, but, like, the movie, to me, didn't really get funny until about halfway through.
Yeah, agreed.
And, like, I did notice that there's a pretty big difference between the way Eddie Murphy delivers his lines in the beginning of the movie versus the latter half of the movie. The beginning is very, like, fast-paced, very, like, almost like we've talked about the, like, 70s kind of style comedy where it's, like, back and forth, like lightning fast dialogue. Mm-hmm. And then the later half of the movie is kind of more of that, like, evolved, let things land kind of comedy that, like, really started to develop in the 80s. So, yeah, maybe that's part of it. But, yeah, I mean, overall, it's a fun movie. Eddie Murphy's hilarious, and a lot of the other actors in this movie are really great, like, for him to play off of.
Yeah.
So yeah, really good overall.
You know, I kind of had the same reaction. So I've seen this movie a couple times, probably only literally like 2 times. And I saw it. I haven't seen it in a long time. I watched it as a kid, and I watched all 3 of them like back to back to back. And I didn't really remember this movie except for the art gallery scene and the climactic, like, shootout at the end. I knew it was in a mansion. That's all I really remember from the movie. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. The beginning was a little all over the place, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In a simple way, like, it's all over the place, because it's not really all over the place, but it's just like you don't know what's happening, and it takes a bit to get going. But I do like it. I do like Eddie Murphy. I think he's great in the role, and I think it's a classic 80s movie for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. The beginning's a little, like, scatterbrained, even though it has purpose. It's kind of weird. It's like it just kind of meanders to get to where it's trying to go, and, like, it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so this movie is, definitely part of the blockbuster 80s movies. I mean, it was a $13 million budget, which is not huge, at least for our standards now. It made over $300 million at the box office, which is an insane return on investment. It was the first R-rated movie in film history to gross $200 million domestically, which is very impressive. It broke the 11-year streak, or not streak, excuse me, the record, 11-year record set by The Exorcist in 1973 for being the highest grossing rated R movie. And then this movie, Beverly Hills Cop, held the record for like 19 years until Matrix Reloaded in 2003. And after adjusting for inflation, this is like the third highest grossing rated R film domestically of all time, next to The Godfather and The Exorcist.
Huh.
Pretty interesting. That may be changing as we speak, though, because Deadpool and Wolverine is making a lot of money. So, yeah, this was 1984's second highest grossing film, next to it was only just behind Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then this started the trend. This was the first of 7 Eddie Murphy movies to open #1 at the box office, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
I forgot he had that many hit. I mean, I knew he was a very bankable star, but I didn't know it was that many.
Yeah, and I think this is like not quite, because his special Raw is like the peak of like his stand-up career, I think. So this is a few years before that, but this is when he's like rocketing up, like in fame for sure.
Yeah,
and like,
did he do Delirious before this? Yeah, he had just done Delirious the year prior. I just looked it up.
so yeah, I mean, he's arguably up there with like Tom Cruise as one of like the biggest '80s stars, and maybe even who else would be like up there?
I mean, Schwarzenegger,
Stallone, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Eddie Murphy is really important to '80s cinema.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'm excited to do the second one. I want to do that. I've talked about it. We'll do a sequels month. I'm Googling it right now. Highest grossing actor of the 80s.
He's got to be close.
Harrison Ford was the highest grossing actor. He was third. Okay, Eddie Murphy was third. Interesting. So yeah, Harrison Ford was first with his films earning over $1 billion, which is insane for the 80s.
Well,
I mean,
he
obviously
had
he
two
had
Star Wars movies.
Yeah,
So,
and
that
2
helped.
Indiana Jones movies.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well, three.
Man, he was
Three
killing
Indiana
it.
Jones. Yeah. Dan Aykroyd was second, thanks to Ghostbusters, and technically he had a role in one of the Indiana Jones movies. He was in the second one. Eddie Murphy was third with $828 million. Then it was Bill Murray. Then it was Tom Cruise.
Oh.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this movie... I love Eddie Murphy's character. I like his detective, it's like a noir style, almost detective film. And he's always like the smartest one in the room. And I love that. And that's where the writing comes in, which the screenplay was nominated for an Oscar. It didn't win. But the shooting script was literally scrapped together from many projects over the years. And when they didn't know what to do, they basically just had Eddie Murphy improvise. There's a lot of improvisation in this movie. Judge Reinhold and John Ashton improvised a lot, and then so did Eddie Murphy, obviously. Speaking of Ghostbusters and Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy was cast in Ghostbusters and dropped out to do this movie.
Oh, interesting.
Pretty interesting. Imagine a world of if he had done that, if he had done Ghostbusters, how different would cinema be?
Yeah, it's,
you know what I mean?
Even though, oh God, who
Ernie
replaced him? Ernie Hudson, is awesome in Ghostbusters.
He is awesome.
Yeah, that would be wild, because then maybe Ernie Hudson would be in Beverly Hills Cop.
That'd be interesting. Be a different world.
Yeah.
Speaking of dropping out and different casting, this movie was originally made for Sylvester Stallone.
That's so wild.
Yeah. And it was written, it had a different script with different action beats. The ending was
Probably much
a
more
car
serious.
chase. Yeah, much more like Cobra style.
Yeah.
Or even Tango and Cash, even though Tango and Cash is kind of goofy on purpose. But yeah, he left the project. Stallone left the project because he didn't think audiences would accept him as a fish out of the water cop who was new to the lifestyle of Beverly Hills. He also didn't like the inclusion of comedy because he just wasn't a comedic actor. He was just too serious.
Yeah.
And then a rumor was spread by producer Don Simpson regarding Stallone's participation in the film. When Simpson wanted to find like a way to kick Stallone off the project, they knew he wasn't right for it. He pulled strings so Stallone could participate in a European medical trial that aimed to create super erectile capabilities for men. The project then cast Eddie Murphy in the role and moved on once Stallone went overseas. Like, that's hilarious. I read that. I was like, no fucking way.
That's funny.
Like, what does that even mean? Like, I want to look into that.
Yeah.
Like, super erectile capabilities?
Oh my god.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh. Stallone is rather short. Maybe he has a little man complex or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been definitely also wild if Stallone was in this role. Like, I could not see him in this at all.
No, and like I think the key to this movie is that he is a fish out of water, and like everything's very foreign to him. Foley, I mean. And yeah, Stallone is at this time, even in 84, was like the number one or number two like action star. So that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, wouldn't gel for sure.
Yeah.
You know, Stallone is a little funny in certain roles. Again, like Tango and Cash, we did the episode on that, a review on that, which I highly recommend you guys go and listen to. That's a great episode and a fun one and a very fun movie. He is kind of comedic in that, but like the comedy works so well for this movie because of Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and the completed movie made such an impression on the executives at Paramount, who, you know, produced this movie, that they committed to a sequel literally the second the private screening for the movie was done. They're just like, yeah,
Wow.
we'll do a sequel right away. Like, I mean, they knew they had gold on their hands, and obviously they did with this box office monster. Pretty interesting. So the director, Martin Brest, he is a director we know. He did Midnight Run, which we also did an episode on. Check that episode out. Which I love that movie. Midnight Run's great. I like Martin Brest as a director. He's also done Meet Joe Black. He did Scent of a Woman, which is a fantastic movie with Al Pacino. He apparently was fired from the movie War Games, which came out in '83, which starred Matthew Broderick. And it was his second directorial endeavor. And because he was fired, the industry was like, we don't want to touch this guy. We think he's like, you know, damaged goods and he'll ruin everything. But Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, obviously they're famous producers. They did Top Gun, another shout out to another episode. That's all I'm going to do this episode is just shout out our other episodes. So listen to them, people, if you haven't already. But thank you for listening if you have. Yeah, they Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer really wanted to hire him and continually asked him, and Martin Brest was like, no, I don't want to do it. They kept calling him so much that he like literally took his phone off the hook because they were pestering him so much. But Bruckheimer insisted, and then Martin Brest flipped a quarter, literally flipped a coin to see, he's like, all right, should I do it? Yes or no? Heads or tails? And obviously he ended up doing it. And because the movie was such a success, he still had that quarter and he framed it, which is really cool. Because I mean, obviously that movie made him a bankable director instead of the poison that he was thought of for his firing of War Games. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh my. So I was gonna say, like, just right off the bat, Glenn Frey's "The Heat Is On," possibly the most '80s song released in the '80s. It's got
So
like
good.
everything in it. It's got like the dance beat, the synth, the saxophone. You know, it's got like every '80s like pop rock staple in it.
Oh yeah.
And then, you know, the like theme song of the movie is Axel F, which is the like synthesizer kind of
Do 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 do
Yeah.
do 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 do.
which is
Yeah.
instrumental only.
And it's,
But-
in my opinion, it's way overplayed in this movie.
Oh yeah, it's like constant. Yeah.
It's kind of obnoxious.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's kind of the theme song, but you know,
Yeah. It's
it's
like
named after the main character. So, but yeah, like so much '80s music content in this movie, and it's pretty great.
It is, yeah.
Probably the most '80s soundtrack that we've had in a movie, at least in a
So
long
far.
time that we've watched. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we haven't. I mean, again, we forgot to mention it on the Back to the Future episode. Another episode shout out. There we go.
Yeah.
But and we mentioned in the last episode Aliens that we forgot to mention it. So another shout out. I'm going to keep them going, people. I'm going to keep them going. Yeah, we love a good '80s soundtrack, and this movie is definitely probably, like you said, it's I'd say it's the most '80s out of the entire lineup we've done so far.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many tracks that are just such '80s jives and vibes in this. Yeah, it's overplayed. It's just like, all right, well, here's another scene. Boom, Axel F theme. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, Axel Foley going to his hotel. Boom, Axel Foley theme.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so overdone, but it gets stuck in your head for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This for our generation, I feel like the Crazy Frog rendition of it comes to
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
and that fucking thing is so annoying.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So Harold Faltermeyer, who composed the score for Beverly Hills Cop and the Axel F, it became a worldwide hit. The theme. He initially referred to the song as the Banana in the Exhaust theme, which is funny because it was originally composed exclusively for the scene where he pulls that banana prank and puts it in, the two cops' cars, Judge Reinhold and John Ashton's car. However, the theme was so loved, obviously, and so fittingly perfect for the context of that scene and just the guy of Axel Foley that it became the main theme for the movie, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's iconic, and it's just like they only had it for the one scene. Imagine that too. Just like there's a lot of things that if they just did one thing differently, this could have been completely different and not a pulp culture phenomenon like it is.
Right. Yeah, and like it is like a really catchy song. But it could be very forgettable if it was just used in one short,
Yeah.
Thing. But yeah, the fact that they like cram it down your throat through the entire movie, it's easy to get it stuck in your head, and it becomes more memorable for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, the movie starts off with Eddie Murphy, like you said, kind of talking fast. But I love that scene in the beginning where it's just kind of that one take of him arguing and talking with that one guy in the truck. And then it's got the cop car that's in the background that's like goes by, stops, backs up, and then comes down in just one super long take, which I was like, oh, this is awesome. Again, I didn't remember a lot of the a lot of the things. I probably haven't seen the movie since I probably was in like middle school when I saw him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But then the movie opens with that big chase scene too, with the truck.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And like, I love when a movie just opens and gets right to like action. It just like cool, like it sucks you in as the viewer and like gets you interested in what's happening and gets you like, all right, this movie's going to be entertaining.
Yeah.
I really like that scene.
This movie in particular is a really like not the earliest, but a very successful and early instance of action comedy. And they really emphasize the action, which is cool. It's like I feel like a lot of times action comedies have like one big action sequence or something, and then the rest of it's just, trying to be comedy. This movie does balance that pretty well. And it keeps the action spaced properly throughout the movie, and really make like it really feels like an action movie. It doesn't feel like a comedy,
Yes, and I like that. I like that a lot.
Right, and like to your point earlier, it feels like a noir detective movie at the same time, which is a really, really interesting addition to that matchup.
Yeah, and it's funny because Martin Brest really didn't know how to shoot action. And he shot particular scenes multiple times from different angles and was like so stressed about trying to get it perfect. And obviously he did very well with it. So it paid off. I mean, the also in the beginning you get Eddie Murphy meeting his friend Mike, and then Mike gets shot, and it was like kind of brutal how he dies.
Yeah.
And you get, speaking of Mike, you get Mike from Breaking Bad doing the murder.
Yeah.
And he's cool in this. He's like the henchman, and
the number 2 guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't really talk at all in the movie,
No.
but I like the scene where Eddie Murphy goes to the like country club and like throws I don't even know his name in the movie, but throws Mike from Breaking Bad over the buffet table.
Yeah.
Let's see what it is. Zach. It was Zach. It's like, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the villain. The villain's cool. I like the villain in it. Steven Berkoff, Victor Maitland. I think he's pretty cool, and I feel like that scene, speaking of, where they're at the country club, and he's like, I don't think you realize who you're really dealing with. I like all that. I mean, what do you think about the villain?
Yeah, he's the the cool white collar criminal, who like doesn't get his hands dirty, It's a really great like juxtaposition with Eddie Murphy, who's the like loose cannon cop, from the rough, neighborhoods of Detroit,
Yeah.
It's like a really great contradiction between the two of them. And like, I think helps helps the comedy between them, even though like it's really one-sided with Axel Foley's like wise ass, comments and stuff. But it's their dynamic's interesting because neither of them take any shit, but in different ways. So it's pretty neat.
It's a good point. Yeah, and like how Eddie Murphy gets into these situations is awesome. And it's just like it pisses off Victor Maitland. Like it pisses off the bad guy, which I love. It's just like it's getting under his skin, and he's just like he's slowly peeling away at the layers of this villain, and I think that's really cool.
It's like you can see elements of this in John McClane later in Die Hard. The wisecracking,
Yes.
the like slowly kind of poking and prodding, like probing for weaknesses and trying to piss everybody off, and like you kind of see that a lot in Axel Foley, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, he's like the smartest one in the room, which is so cool. And just, I think a good scene of that is epitomized in the strip club scene, where it's him, Judge Reinhold, and John Ashton, the two cops, where he's just like, he's just having a fun time dancing and like saying, Rosewood, the stripper likes you, and give her $1, put it in there. And then he sees two guys come in there that are about to rob it. He's just like, why are there two guys in the middle of June in like trench coats in here? Like something's about to go down. Like follow my lead. And I feel like that scene is awesome because again, it's like he's not oblivious. He's always aware of his surroundings versus the two cops are just focused on him. Yeah. But that's how he earns their trust and kind of shows them the ropes, which is really cool. And it's like a really cool like role reversal. And I think that's a really cool turning point in the movie that made me really enjoy it more.
Yeah, and like what's cool about the way they wrote Foley is that he's, like you said, always the smartest one in the room, but he doesn't play it that way ever.
Yeah.
Which is always like it leaves or like lends to that like loose cannon aspect where like you never know what he's gonna do to get in or out of a situation. And like the strip club scene is particularly hilarious because he pretends like he's wasted and like walking up to one of the gunmen like, oh man, like Billy or whatever. Yeah. And just like beats the shit out of him. Takes him down like in like half a second.
I love that. And then
like you said, it is another great contradiction with the Beverly Hills Police, who are these like by the book, like strict police officers, but like they're not actually good at their job, really, as evidenced by how he loses them, multiple times, and they miss these guys that are coming in to rob the strip club and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny how they are so by the book. It's like the Beverly Hills Police is like a character in this movie in and of itself. Yeah. And they all the characters that are on the police force for Beverly Hills, they all basically change, or like the people that get on Foley's side change. They have like a character change, and they all are like, as funny as it sounds, like not going to do things by the book, which is, kind of interesting, but it's like, are the police corrupt? It questions that. And I'm sure they're not trying to get too deep into the symbolism there of dirty cops, but like it's just interesting. It's like, well, look what Foley did by kind of bending the rules, and I think the great scene that showcases that is Ronnie Cox's character, the lieutenant, making up a story like Foley does about the end in the mansion and how they kill Victor Maitland.
Yeah, like that's another great writing tie-in moment when to Foley's story about the strip club, which is like this over-the-top, like these guys like busted
super
these two
cops.
guys. And it was super cops, and like they should be wearing capes and like all this shit. And like the lieutenant's like, "Is that true?" And the guy's like, "No."
Yeah.
It just like blows it. But like,
apparently that scene was improvised too, and John Ashton, where he's kind of going like this, like grabbing his like face because he's cracking up.
Yeah. It is hilarious because he's like overselling the shit out of it.
Yeah.
It's another great like full circle kind of moment where the lieutenant's the one that steps in and he's like, yeah, this is what happened, and then everyone just kind of gives him the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like, yeah, that's what I saw, you know?
Yeah. And
yeah,
John
I mean,
Ashton Taggart's like, he goes along with it this time, which is a cool,
right.
you know, like you said, full circle moment.
Yeah. And like, you know, we kind of talked about this with Cobra
Episode
early
shout
on.
out.
Yeah, another episode. Very early episode.
That we did.
Yeah. But like, you know, this is 84, so you know, we're not like that far out of the like 70s crime wave in a lot of the big cities. And like there's kind of this like, I don't know, like people kind of wanted the like vigilante, you know, style justice to like help put this like, you know, crime wave to bed in a lot of ways. Like Death Wish, you know, was like this huge movie in the 70s about a guy who just goes and like gets some vigilante justice. And Cobra is not quite a vigilante, but he's a cop that really pushes the limits of you know, what's acceptable. It's kind of the same with Foley, where he's like, he doesn't do it by the book, but he gets the result you want. So, you know, it's a little bit different time.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a RoboCop is another good example, although that's, you know, futurism.
Another
like,
episode shout out.
Another episode shout out. Watch RoboCop, where his partner like beats the shit out of that guy in the police lobby, and everyone's like, "Yeah, get him!" You know?
Yeah.
Like, and like impressed that like she beat the shit out of this guy that's like resisting arrest or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's just like a little bit of a different mentality coming out of the 70s.
Yeah.
And like by the end of the 80s, I think had shifted back to like, yeah, cops should just be beating the shit out of people for no reason.
Yeah.
Like,
not every cop's John McClane.
Right. Yeah.
Or Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, but I like that he bends the rules in this, and just like, again, every situation he gets into where he becomes a different character is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And like where he's the inspector for the customs, and just like people are believing him, and it's funny. And then he's like the very flamboyant guy who's like says he's got herpes simplex 10 or whatever, which is hilarious.
And the
to get
waiter's
into
like,
the country club.
Maybe you should tell him that yourself.
Yeah. I love that. It's like such a genius. Again, it's the smartest guy in the room. It's like, obviously I know saying this is going to get him to get me in that room.
Right.
Genius.
Yeah.
Genius.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, like, the cops arrest him, though. Like, it's interesting because he's, like, disturbing the peace when he gets, you know, in the beginning of the movie, he gets thrown out of the window, and people are like, oh, yeah, you're like, you ran out of the window. Like, you ran, you know, out of that situation. And then he gets arrested at the at that country club again, and it's kind of like the same thing. He's always getting into these situations.
The one thing I was surprised with both of those scenes where he gets arrested, I was expecting a dirty cop angle or something like that. That the department was like being paid off by the villain or something like that. But like,
I was expecting that too.
No, it's just that they're by the book. They're very, you know, anal about protecting the image of Beverly Hills and, you know, all that stuff.
That rich angle too. It's the higher class of like.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a line that Foley says where I forget exactly what happens, but he says something about there's like a very mild allusion to corruption in the department where he's just like, oh, he's got, you know, Victor Maitland's smarter than that. Like he's got people paid off. I think it was in regards to like getting a warrant or something like that. It's just,
Or was it the customs thing?
I think so. I apologize. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I know what
but
you're
I remember
talking
that.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's like that particular scene where it's just like, oh, like there's probably he's already probably paid someone off, so it's like let's not go down that angle.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of the police lieutenant Ronnie Cox from RoboCop, same episode shout out. Him, and then there's one villain in this that are both in Total Recall, which that's a 90s movie that I recommend people watch because that movie's fucking awesome. It's interesting because I'm used to Ronnie Cox being in a kind of corporate villain role, obviously in RoboCop and Total Recall, but he's the good guy in this movie, and again, I haven't seen this movie in a while. I expected him to be in on that corruption.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad he wasn't, and he's good
Yeah.
in this. He's good in this movie.
Yeah. I feel like it would have leaned maybe too like film noir had there been a like police corruption angle.
Yeah,
I feel like it couldn't have ended as cleanly. Also,
yeah, that
it's
makes
it
sense.
ends pretty cleanly. It's nicely packaged at the end. You know, all the bad guys are toast. You know, everyone can kind of go on their way and celebrate to some poppy 80s music. You know, how you do after a gunfight.
Yeah, let's talk. Speaking of which, let's talk about that kind of final gun scene in the mansion. So that mansion is the same mansion that the next year Arnold goes to in Valverde to get his daughter named Jenny, which in Beverly Hills Cop, Axel Foley is going to get his friend Jenny from that mansion. Pretty interesting.
It's just full of what cartel drug peddlers and commando.
Like, yeah, some Valverde army or something. And,
Yeah.
and they get wasted versus like 4 guys get wasted in this scene in Beverly Hills Cop. But
Another episode shout out though, Commando.
Yep. Almost forgot. Thank you, Jake. Shout out. Go watch that episode right after this one. Do it.
Yeah.
It's a good episode. I like that one. That was a fun
that's
one.
a good one.
And that's a fun movie.
Yeah.
The shootouts in this scene are really good. I'm back to Beverly Hills Cop, by the way, not Commando. The shootouts is really good. Like, there's some awesome like action right there, and they've got machine guns, they've got handguns, and like one shotgun, so they're kind of the underdog. And you've got the comedy of Judge Reinhold Rosewood being like, you know, police freeze, everyone put down your guns, you're under arrest, and like I love that. I thought that was really funny. I liked his character a lot, especially where he like doesn't take Axel to the airport to get him out of there, to like have him get escorted out of the state, and he takes him to the art gallery and then to the warehouse, and he's like sitting there contemplating. Like I don't know, his character's really good. I like him, and I like them. They're really good in the other sequels as well. So I take it you haven't seen the sequels, right?
No.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they just came out with a new one on Netflix. It was direct to Netflix. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good, but it was okay. Worth a watch. But so there's that scene. This I thought this was a pretty interesting tidbit of information for the movie. There's a scene where Ronnie Cox, the lieutenant, is like, "Where is Taggart and Rosewood? Like, where are they?" Like, and they use like a GPS tracking system to find them. And GPS was not invented at that time, which is pretty intuitive and pretty cool.
Didn't they have like is it LoJack?
From what I read, it said when they're trying to locate him, they consult a satellite tracking system. At the time, it was made up to advance the plot. It was invented later, a predecessor of the modern day global positioning system.
Interesting.
GPS. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I feel like they do that all the time in like cop and like FBI movies. like
Yeah.
facial recognition, like software and stuff, in
Yeah,
like
there's always something
1980.
to
Like that
advance
didn't
the plot.
exist.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, overall, I like the movie. I'm not, again, I don't love it. It is classic. It is an 80s blockbuster. It's got the soundtrack to boot. I like the acting. I like the writing. I like the dialogue. I think the sequel is better if I remember. And
Okay.
I definitely want us to watch it. I don't know what month. Jake and I were talking about this earlier in the day. We don't know what month we want to do that. But it is coming, folks. I know I've talked about it in pretty much every fucking episode that we want to do a sequels month. It's coming. And I'm excited for it because I put a list together with Jake this morning that I think would be cool to do.
Yeah.
It's movies from our other episodes, so we can shout those episodes out as well.
Yep.
Yeah, you got any other thoughts you want to
So the
add to
only
it?
other thing I wanted to talk about was the end, like the final shootout with between Axel and the villain, where he's got like Jenny hostage in the hallway. What do you think of that ending?
I thought it was fine. I liked it because it's the classic of like, you know, the hostage elbows the hostage taker, and then what's cool is you've got the lieutenant and Axel working together and blowing the dude away, and then he falls down the stairs, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me. Were you expecting something a little more grandiose?
Yeah, I just felt like it wasn't that satisfying. Like
It was
you
quick.
know, it's very quick.
Yeah.
And like when I think of like the big final showdown in a shootout kind of scenario, like I'll use Die Hard as the gold standard again, where you know he shoots Hans and the other guy, but then there's the secondary kind of action that has to happen for him
Gotta
to
separate the
finally
watch.
die, you know?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, felt like that secondary thing was missing. But I don't, you know, I just was curious what you thought about it.
Yeah.
I think it's okay. I do think it adds something that the lieutenant is there with him.
Yeah, I like that aspect. I don't know. I don't think it needed to be super grandiose because it's like he's the one pulling the strings. He's not really like, you know, he's not the one killing people.
Oh, right. Yeah, no.
You know, so it didn't really bother me. Again, I agree it's quick, but I like the ending. It is wrapped up a little quick, but
Yeah.
they also didn't have a lot of time apparently to shoot all of that production wise because they weren't allowed to shoot after like 10:30 at night in Beverly Hills.
Go figure.
So, yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a good movie. I think it's worth a watch for sure. I mean, it's classic. You got the pop culture aspect to it. And again, I'm excited to do the sequel. I really want to do it, especially because it's directed by Tony Scott. And I don't remember like anything about the sequel. I remember the third one, but I don't remember the second one. So I'm excited to watch it. But yeah, I think again, I think it's worth a watch, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, it's a classic for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely worth watching.
Good. All right, guys, we'll catch you next week, and thanks again for listening.
Yep, see you.